The New York Giants drop a 20-17 game against the Carolina Panthers in overtime. Their current losing streak extending to 5 games. We've got takeaways, rants, and just a few slivers of kudos coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL in all lowercase letters to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. Prize Picks, run your game. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Chaina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work, as well as that of the New York Giants on SI team. And as always, welcome on into my Blue Crew community members, to my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And folks, I don't know what to say anymore. I really don't. I mean, what did I just witness this on Sunday morning? Seriously, what did I just witness? New York Giants losing to the Carolina Panthers 20-17 in overtime. The Panthers, you look at the numbers, pretty much even in a lot of areas. But the Giants, well, we're going to talk about it. I've got rants that I'm going to talk about. Daniel Jones, that's up first. Then in segment 2, we'll talk about Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, who also is deserving of rants. And then, I want to try to end the show on a positive note. And I know a lot of you are probably saying, well, what could you possibly say that's positive? There were little few slivers of positive developments to come out of this game. So we'll talk about that at the end of the show. All right. So hopefully you'll hang in with me until we get to that point. So let's start things off. Folks, look, Daniel Jones has got to be benched. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I figured, okay, maybe with a better offensive line, better with a number one receiver, Malik Neighbors, with Brian Daboll calling the plays. Maybe, just maybe, Daniel Jones would turn it around and be the quarterback that he was in 2022. Nope. Folks, Daniel Jones is a damaged quarterback. And if it wasn't apparent in the game against Pittsburgh when he made, stupid decisions, if it wasn't apparent in the other games since then, it was apparent this game. And of course, I'm talking about, as the best example, the flea flicker on 3rd and 1. Now, look, I was not a big fan of that call. I thought, you're running the ball well. Why not just run it to pick up the 1 yard that you needed? But look, I give Brian Daboll credit because he wanted to pull out a surprise. And you know what? The play would have worked. Malik Neighbors got open. Wan'Dale Robinson got open. What did Daniel Jones do? He didn't trust his eyes. And this has been the story of this guy's career for the last, 16 games that he started, of which he's 3-13. He doesn't trust what he sees post-game or post-snap. And it is just getting to the point now where it is costing this team points. It is costing this team games. So Daniel Jones takes the snap. And what does he do? He's looking. Now, granted, he had a few defenders in front of him, including one guy who was waving his arms, jumping up there. Daniel Jones got rattled, tucked the ball in, curled up, took a sack. All right. Even if you don't see those two receivers who are wide open, at least throw the ball away and make it 4th and 1. Give yourself a chance to pick up that 1 yard. Give yourself another chance. But no, he takes the sack. I mean, I don't know what to say about this anymore. I know Daniel Jones is not stupid, but football wise, you look at some of the decisions he makes and you just want to scream. You just want to pull your hair out. And he's got to be benched. He's got to be benched. They cannot go on with this guy under center, right? If that wasn't enough for you, let's take a look at some of the plays during the course of this particular game. All right, the first possession, what does he do? He's got Malik Neighbors wide open along the sideline on a third down play, and he doesn't connect with him. The accuracy issue pops up. Then there were a couple of other plays where he just didn't see guys wide open. I think Wandale was on the other sideline. I forget what the down and distance was, but there was one play where Wandale Robinson was wide open. Daniel Jones never bothered to throw to him. All right. This guy cannot continue as the quarterback. And not surprisingly, Brian Daboll, after the game, was asked about the future of Daniel Jones. And whereas in the past few weeks, when that question has come up and Daboll has come right out and said Daniel is the starter, he didn't say that this week. He basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, we've got a lot to think about, a lot of evaluation to do, and so forth. That, to me, folks, is the kiss of death and signals the end of the Daniel Jones era. That's right, error as opposed to era. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's not all Daniel Jones's fault, but, you just can't have everything perfect when you play this game. At some point, the quarterback's got to make a play about the X's and O's, and he hasn't been able to do that. He doesn't trust what he sees. I question if he really trusts his receivers and his protection. I just, enough's enough. Now, of course, the drawback, some of you will say is, well, just leave Daniel Jones in there because it assures us that we're going to get the first round pick or the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Not necessarily, folks. I mean, quite honestly, I'm not so sure Drew Lock, who would be the next man up, is going to be any better. I'm not so sure Tommy DeVito is going to be any better. But I do know this. I think with Locke and with DeVito, depending on which one they ultimately go with, and I do believe, by the way, Daniel Jones is going to be benched because, look, at this point, you've got that $23 million injury guarantee. You might as well put him on the bench because you ain't going anywhere with him, But hopefully you at least get these games a little bit more competitive. Even if they lose, just make them more competitive. I mean, it looks like the Keystone Cops out there sometimes. And, for Daniel Jones to have 2 turnovers in the red zone, come on. This is just crazy now. He's got to go to the bench. I'm sorry, Daniel Jones fans, anybody who's out there. And believe it or not, over at New York Giants on SI, I've got one person who every week sends me at least 2 letters saying that it's not Daniel Jones's fault. It's Brian Daboll's fault. It's the weather's fault. It's my fault. It's this person's fault. Folks, Daniel Jones is cooked as a quarterback for this team. He needs a fresh start. The Giants need a fresh start. I don't know, again, if Drew Lock is the answer. I don't know if DeVito is the answer. I do know this. Daniel Jones is not the answer. We've just seen too many instances where this guy has had an opportunity to make a play and hasn't. And enough is enough. I mean, his teammates, they're doing their best to hold their tongues. But after the game, you had Malik Neighbors saying, well, I was open and Wandale was open, but, we don't know what Daniel was seeing. Yeah, we don't know what Daniel was seeing. So, this is twice now Malik Neighbors has said, that he was open and the ball wasn't coming his way. And, by the way, Malik Neighbors hasn't had a touchdown since coming back from his concussion. So that's another topic for another show. But anyway, folks, this has got to be it. Now, I doubt Daboll is going to make any announcements this week. The Giants have the bye week. The schedule for the media is going to be Daboll will speak on Monday afternoon. I believe Joe Schoen will be speaking to the media on Tuesday. I think that's what the plan is. And then everybody's off the rest of the week, except for us here at Locked On Giants. We'll be here all week. So we'll see what they decide. But you know what? They cannot go on with Daniel Jones at quarterback. All right, coming up next, speaking of Brian Daboll, we'll talk about him. We'll talk about Joe Schoen and their part in this whole disaster of a season. Don't go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like you. The fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. And you know what else gave me a bit of Giants fan fuel this week? The Giants moved up to second in the draft order after their loss to Carolina. They're still behind the Jacksonville Jaguars, but hey, the higher the pick, the better the player, hopefully. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com to ship nationwide. That's the number 5hourenergy.com to ship nationwide. Hey, Giant fans, Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. It's easy to win real money this football season on Prize Picks. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinion into real money. And be sure to check out Prize Picks weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, when every Tuesday Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Price Picks. Run your game. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Thank you for tuning in and joining me for this rant fest that we're on. And just real quick, coming up on the Locked On Giants podcast, I'm going to have Emery Hunt on with me for tomorrow's show. Emery and I talked about quarterbacks, believe it or not. We taped the show last week on Friday, and we're going to talk about quarterbacks in the draft class and quarterback options because, I don't know, we must have known that, the Giants would be in a market for a quarterback, and that's where it's headed. But anyway, let's talk now about Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen's role in this. Now, there seems to be, whereas most Giant fans I'm starting to see are in favor of the team moving on from Daniel Jones, there's split decision, if you will, on Daboll and on Schoen. And I want to start with Joe Schoen. I do not think that Joe Schoen is going to get fired. All right. He's started to build, a decent foundation, strong draft class. The one thing, though, that I think kind of had a ripple effect in the locker room recently was the decision to cut Nick McLeod, who was a very popular player, a very well-liked player, and a decent player, when McLeod refused to take a pay cut. That did not go over well with several players in the locker room. Now, I'm not saying that those players, retaliated by not giving full effort or anything like that, but you see things like that and you're reminded, okay, this is a business, and, Shane stopped playing around, and you just, if you're a player, sometimes you wonder if maybe a guy was being used as a scapegoat for all the money that you're spending that you don't have enough to cover what you need to get through the rest of the year. So, I mean, look, quite honestly, I'm not sure where the Giants could have gotten more money because they were dead last in the league in salary cap space. By cutting McLeod, they do have enough money to get through. But, you know, if you're the players, you wonder if some of those guys were maybe viewing this as the Giants sending a message to the locker room. And, that's just something to keep an eye on because I do know that there were a few players that were upset by that move. But look, Joe Schoen, I think, is safe. Now, Brian Daboll, I think he will survive the rest of the season. I do think they will retain him for next year. But here's the question you've got to ask yourself if you're ownership. Actually, there's two questions here. Number one, do you trust Daboll to be a part of picking the next quarterback for this team and developing him? Daboll has not been able to, whatever reason, get Daniel Jones back on track. All right, which I have another thought about that, which I'll get to in a second. Drew Lock, what we saw in the preseason, not that great. Tommy DeVito, a little bit of hope there, but is it enough to make him the bridge quarterback? I don't know. But here's what drives me crazy about Brian Daboll. And there's a couple things. Number one, why wasn't there a competition for the starting quarterback job? I think back to when Russell Wilson was supposed to visit with the Giants, and he did visit with the Giants, and he just kept on going because basically he was told that it was Daniel Jones's job. And coaches talk all the time about competition, how they love it, how they encourage it. Has Daniel Jones ever had competition for his job? No, he hasn't. And that I put on the coaching staff. All right. There's just no excuse for that. If you get a guy who's coming off an injury and he's played well, that's one thing. But Daniel Jones last year did not play well before his injury. And there should have been a competition for his job. So that's point number one I want to make. Now, point number two, disclaimer here, because when Daboll announced he was going to take over the play calling, I was in favor of it. I thought, okay, you know what? The Giants struggled with Mike Kafka. They weren't really scoring. Daboll's the one who designed the system, let him call because, he's got the deepest knowledge of, what to do in certain situations. Folks, I think I was wrong with that. I really do, because look, Daboll, even though he has become calmer on the sideline, the play calling at times just leaves you scratching your head as to what he's thinking. And I go back to that flea flicker play. You have 3rd and 1, your running game is permanent, was humming along, and you try to be cute. This team can't afford to be cute right now. All right. They're just not there. So, another thing that drives me crazy, throwing short to the sticks, thinking that, your receivers will pick up the yak. Doesn't happen very often. That drives me nuts. Another thing, when they're inside the dead zone, aka the red zone, why are you running slow developing plays, especially against faster, more athletic defenses? How does that make sense? These defenses have fewer yards to cover, and they can afford to come up. And if you're running plays to the sideline, outside the tackle or whatever, why? They're going to stop you 9 times out of 10. So I just don't understand some of the play calling decisions that Daboll has made, And look, I suppose Joe Schoen could push the issue and say, hey, look, Brian, let somebody else call the plays. You manage the sideline. But ultimately, I guess that's Daboll's decision. And I just don't see him giving up the play call. And here's the sad thing, folks. Again, going back to Daniel Jones, and I'm not saying that this would salvage Daniel Jones, but go back to 2022. Kafka was calling the plays, and Jones did pretty well. Now, last year, again, Jones had the injury. There were the injuries across the board, and then Jones only played, 6 games? And Kafka was calling the plays? So, coincidence? Maybe. But at this point, would it maybe pay for Brian Daboll to say, you know what, Mike, we want to win games. You call the plays the rest of the way? Can't hurt. Will it happen? I doubt it. I really doubt it, because it's all a matter of, do the Giants think that Daniel Jones is holding them back? Or, is there circumstances beyond the play calling? And these are all issues that I, look at this team and I say, they got to get resolved. So, look, I do think that Joe Shane will be back. I mean, you don't want to have to start over with a new GM head coach. As tempting as it might be, you just don't want to have to do that every 2-3 years. It doesn't help. Is Daboll going to be back? Depends. I think he will, especially if, he says, look at what the quarterback play I'm getting. We have everything around him solid, a good, decent offensive line, a number one receiver. I'm calling the plays. Look at all the stuff on the film that he's not doing. That, I think, will get Daboll another year, if that's the explanation or the reason that's given. We'll never know, because that will never come out in the public. Daboll is not the type to throw players under the bus, as evidenced by him saying that, that flea flicker play was bad coaching by him. So that being said, I do think Daboll stays. I know some people are like, fire him now. But in looking ahead slightly, and I don't want to get too far ahead into next year, maybe rethink this whole idea of calling the plays. If Kafka's not back next year, which I don't think he will be, give the play calling to Shea Tierney. All right? Have a competition at quarterback. I mean, that one just totally blows my mind. It's not like you got Eli Manning back there in his prime, or Patrick Mahomes back there, where you don't have to have a competition. I mean, that's a sad state of the quarterback room, that they didn't have a competition, a legitimate competition. So you've got that, and look, there's other things that I saw that are coaching related. Lack of discipline. For example, on I think it was the punt return by the Panthers that was muffed. This doesn't get mentioned, but worth noting here. I don't know who the gunner was. I don't remember who it was, but whoever the gunner was ran right by the Panthers punt returner who was calling for a fair catch. In that situation, don't you think it might be better if you just stop and stay in front of the guy in case he muffs? So now that you are in a position to maybe recover the muff? Makes sense to me, but that wasn't what the Giants did. So just the little things. And folks, I haven't even talked about the defense yet, which was also a problem. The defense, the run defense, is just terrible, particularly on the edges. And, it's interesting. Dexter Lawrence had something to say that kind of caught my eye. And he was asked about, are the players receiving the message? And he basically cast some doubt as to whether or not the message from Brian Daboll, it is being received by everybody. Is it falling on deaf ears? So these are all things that have to be taken into consideration by ownership if they're going to stick with Daboll or if they're going to move on after this year. All right. Coming up next, there were a few tiny little things that were positive. So how about we end the show on a positive note? And we'll do that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with the promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with the thoughtfully curated gift packages that start at $89.99. You're going to love the selection and quality you get from Omaha Steaks. So go on and check them out today at omahasteaks.com and get 50% off plus an additional $30 with our promo code NFL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. Minimum purchase may apply. Hey, Giant fans, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more, all on the very same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we're running a little long on this show, but just so much to talk about after the Giants blew a game, a 20-17 loss to the Carolina Panthers in overtime. The Giants, at last check, were number 2 in the draft order. They had been number 1 after their loss, but the Jacksonville Jaguars lost, so now they're number 1. That's really the only thing I think a lot of us can look forward to after this dismal season. But you know what? There were a few good things to come out of this Giants game. And I just want to mention, throw kudos out at these particular players and situations. I'm going to start with Tyrone Tracy. All right. Now, I know Tracy had the fumble that led to the Panthers kicking the game-winning field goal. I get that. One play shouldn't define that young man because he played his heart out, and he had his third 100-yard rushing performance of the season. The Giants got themselves a good one in that kid, for sure. And I'm not going to sit here and put that loss on his shoulders because he fumbled. I mean, just it was part of the reason, but not the reason. The Giants had plenty of other opportunities to give themselves a bigger lead, and they just didn't. So I thought Tyrone Tracy was a positive for the most part. Drew Phillips, after the game last week, Drew Phillips stood in the locker room and he said, I got to grow up. He was not happy with his play. Well, you know what? He came this week, put his big boy pants on, and he played like a grown-up. So he had the forced fumble, had some good angles that he took on ball carriers. The Panthers not really, doing a whole lot of damage with their receivers and whatnot. Drew Phillips came to play. And that's a young man. And again, when they initially drafted him, I was like, why? What's the point there? I was wrong on him too, folks. See, I can't admit I'm wrong. But anyway, Drew Phillips had himself a pretty good game, I think. Brian Burns, he went into this week saying, it's just another game. So what if it's against my old team? Folks, he came motivated and ready to play for sure. Right? He had the one quarterback, or actually, I think he had 7 quarterback pressures. So now Leonard Williams, and I think there's one other player whose name escapes me, are the only 3 players since 2019 to have quarterback pressures against all 32 NFL teams. So that's pretty impressive. The one guy, though, who I was really glad to see perform well, Evan Neal. For those who missed it, Evan Neal got his first start since last year against the Raiders. I believe it was week 9. Then he had the season-ending injury. So Evan Neal was back in the starting lineup. The run blocking to that side, pretty good. But here's the other thing that was really good. Evan Neal only allowed 1 quarterback pressure all game long. that coming to Jadeveon Clowney. That is very encouraging. And you know what, folks? I was glad that Evan Neal got a start because, as I have said before, keeping him on the bench and, you've got to know if you got something in him, after sitting him with Brasillo to learn, the new blocking techniques and all that stuff. You've got to know because you've got to make a decision on his option year by next May. So what better way than to find out now what you've got in Evan Neal? And Evan Neal off to a pretty solid start, I would say. So that's encouraging as well. So yeah, folks, some encouraging things to talk about. Not a whole lot. Giants are 2-8, which is not good. They are in a 5-game losing streak, which is the longest under Brian Daboll. That is not good. They are facing a quarterback change. That is not good, even though some of you will probably say that is good. A lot of uncertainty about this team. So we're going to continue to break it down this week, the bye week. So, hopefully you will tune in as we break down different topics and whatnot. And then don't forget, tomorrow I have Emery Hunt on the program. We're going to talk about the quarterback situation. We're going to look at some of the draft prospects at quarterback. We're going to look at some of the potential veterans at quarterback that might become available. And we're going to discuss kind of what the best course of action is because the Daniel Jones era is coming to an end, folks. It has to. So, all right, Giant fans, that does it for me for tonight. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. And, folks, I'll see you tomorrow.